Every team wins some games they should lose. Every team loses some games they should win. This Dodgers team the last couple months really feels like it's mostly just losing the games they should win. I guess let's talk about it on All Dodgers. Hey, what's up? This is All Dodgers, part of the Bleav Network of podcasts, brought to you by FanDuel. I am Jeff Snider, coming to you live, solo. Looked for a while like I might be here to talk about a win. And then it looked like we'd talk about a loss. And then maybe we're going to talk about a win after all. And then Blake Treinen said, nah, you're probably going to talk about a loss. And sure enough, here we are. Dodgers drop game 2 of the series to the Phillies, 9-6. And there's so much to talk about in this game. I'm going to start with the Dave Roberts question, as it says at the bottom of my screen. Here's why Dave Roberts is a topic of conversation tonight. Shohei Ohtani was the starting pitcher. Dodgers said before the game he'd go 5 innings. Ohtani got through 5 innings without allowing any hits on 68 pitches. Relatively low pitch count, 15 or so below his season high. And so there was talk. Wonder if he might come back out for the 6th inning. He didn't. Justin Wrobleski came in, and Wrobleski proceeded to give up 5 runs immediately. Dodgers were suddenly losing. Edgardo Enriquez came in, gave up another run. Dodgers turned a 4-0 lead into a 6-4 deficit there in the top of the 6th inning. Dodgers battle back, bottom of the 8th, get a couple runs, and Shohei Ohtani home run, and then RBI sac fly by Alex Call to get the game tied. And so it's like, okay, well, and we got Ohtani up 3rd in the bottom of the 9th inning. It's the bottom of the Phillies order. Unfortunately, it was the bottom of the Phillies order in the 6th inning too. And Blake Treinen comes in, gets the first 2 guys out on 5 pitches, I think. And then next thing you know, you got a hit, you got a walk, and you got a 3-run homer, and the game's over. Yohan Duran comes in for the Phillies, shuts the Dodgers down, bing, bang, boom, game over. The question is, should Shohei Ohtani have pitched the 6th inning? And, I see in the chat right now, Dodgers, Raiders, everything says, I cannot defend Roberts anymore at this point. I don't care what the game plan was coming into the game. It's called adjustments. I popped that up on the screen because that's the argument. I get that argument. I kind of thought they would bring Ohtani back out. Like I said this in our Discord server, that there's the public game plan. Dave Roberts said 5 innings for Ohtani, but there's also probably an internal game plan that probably does have to do with pitch count. And we heard on the radio broadcast, I don't know if it was on the TV broadcast, so I was listening to the radio side while watching the game tonight. And they said that Dave Roberts asked Ohtani, do you want to go back out for the 6th inning? And Ohtani said, it's your call. And so Roberts chose to stick with the 5-inning plan. I was a little bit surprised he didn't come out for the 6th inning, but not super surprised. Probably 50-50. The main thing it comes down to me, though, is that whenever Ohtani wasn't going to go 9 innings. I don't think even the most old school play by your gut guy would suggest that the Dodgers should have adjusted their plan. Instead of 5 innings, you're going to throw 9 innings and complete the no-hitter. That wasn't going to happen. So at some point, Justin Wrobleski was going to come in this game. Wrobleski was going to be the guy coming in after Ohtani. It has worked really well for them. Wrobleski has been really good. Problem is, Wrobleski was throwing mostly 93 to 94 miles an hour instead of 97 to 98. And he got knocked around. And so it's like he came in and he got lit up by the bottom of the Phillies order in the 6th inning. I'm not sure it would have been significantly better if he had come in to face Schwarber and Harper in the 7th inning. It's like you delay it by 1 inning, I guess. But ultimately, this game for me was lost by the bullpen because Justin Wrobleski and Blake Treinen, and to a lesser extent Edgardo Enriquez, he gave up 1 home run. That happens. But those two guys, Wrobleski and Treinen, both were terrible tonight. And yeah, obviously, if Dave Roberts had a crystal ball and knew Justin Wrobleski was going to be terrible, I don't know if they tracked velocity in the bullpen. I don't know if Wrobleski was throwing slower in the bullpen when he was warming up. I don't know. He did throw 96.6 one time tonight, so but most of them were 93 to 94 miles an hour. And so it's like, I feel like this is a good example of when players play well, managers look smart, and when players suck, managers look dumb. Because I'm not saying it was the right decision to pull Ohtani after 5 innings. I think it would have been the wrong decision to let him go beyond 6, probably. And Wrobleski was going to come in the game. And whenever Ohtani came out, Wrobleski was going to come in. You need Wrobleski to pitch better than he pitched tonight. And I don't see any reason to think he would have pitched better in the 7th inning against the middle of the Phillies order than he did in the 6th inning against the bottom of their order. Wayne Edwards says, I keep apologizing for Roberts. I'm not apologizing for him. I'm saying I don't know that there's anything to apologize for. And I know people don't like that. I think Dave Roberts is a good manager. And I think probably I look at things through that lens. But I don't think I'm blind to the arguments against it. I just think it's hard for me to picture the Dodgers getting through this game, no matter how many innings Ohtani went. It's hard for me to picture them getting through this game without both Wrobleski and Treinen pitching. And both Wrobleski and Treinen sucked. Wrobleski and Treinen, in their 2 innings of work, allowed more runs than the Dodgers scored tonight. And so, while you can quibble with Roberts' decision to pull Ohtani after 5 or 6, ultimately, if the bullpen was going to suck tonight, the Dodgers were going to lose tonight. And there's no reason to think this is... Alex Renteria says, who knows if Robo does that bad against the middle? Point is, keep Ohtani in. Yeah, I mean, you're absolutely right. Nobody knows how Wrobleski would have done against the middle, except for the fact that he got to the middle of the order and sucked against them too. But, maybe it would have been different. Maybe if he comes in the 7th inning, he has a nice sneeze in the bullpen before he comes in and he's throwing 97, 98 instead of 93, 94. I don't know. But ultimately, it's... Yeah, there's the only way to think that Wrobleski would have been better in the 7th inning is if you're just grasping at straws. Because if you suck against the bottom of the order, you're probably going to suck against some of the best hitters in baseball, especially when it's very clear why you sucked. There was no velocity. There was not good location. I don't see much reason to think that would have been different. So ultimately, I'm not on the fire Dave Roberts train. I think this game, it's fair to quibble. Hold on. BL Boyd says, Jeff, you had 2 straight left-handed hitters coming up in the 9th. You had Vesia available. That's why you should be criticizing Dave Roberts. Sorry, I didn't realize that BL Boyd was going to be a racist in that comment, or I wouldn't have put it up on the screen. But you had the bottom of the order coming up in the 9th inning. If you can't trust Blake Treinen to face the bottom of an order, you're not going to go far in October anyway. And that's like, saying it's all hindsight to say, oh, should have used Vesia instead of Treinen. The fact is Treinen got the first 2 guys out, and then it was the 7, 8, 9 hitters who did the damage against him. It's just pitchers got to pitch better. And so, yeah, I'm not justifying Dave Roberts' decision. I'm saying I think it's a reasonable decision. I would have been fine with Ohtani coming back out for the 6th. I think it would have been kind of crazy to have him go farther than that. He's one of the best hitters in baseball, and if he hurts his arm, you probably lose his bat for at least a little while. And we saw his bat is very important to this team. And I know there's no magic number of pitches at which a pitcher gets hurt, but I think the plan that they've come up with, and this plan was made with Dave Roberts and Mark Pryor, the entire pitching coaching staff, plus the front office, plus Shohei Ohtani himself. This was the plan for how they're going to use Ohtani this year. And I just don't think a personal accomplishment of he's throwing a no-hitter is a reason to keep him in. The reason you would keep him in is if you do not trust your bullpen to hold a 4-run lead for 4 innings, which this Dodgers bullpen, that's a reasonable concern. But like I said, Wrobleski was going to pitch in this game. It reminded me, I said it in the Discord, it reminded me of Game 4 of the 2022 NLDS. That people criticized Dave Roberts a lot for pulling Tyler Anderson too early. But for me, Tommy Kahnle was going to pitch in that game. Tommy Kahnle was one of their best relievers available. Whether Anderson came out when he did or an inning later, Kahnle was going to pitch. Kahnle came in and sucked. And they blew that game in the first inning after Anderson came out. And so if it had happened an inning later, it probably still would have happened. And I know all the metaphysical, you know, a butterfly flapped its wings in China, so Blake Treinen didn't suck tonight possibilities. But there's no reason to think Tommy Kahnle would have been better an inning later in that game. There's no reason to think Justin Wrobleski would have been better an inning later in this game. There's no reason to think that Blake Treinen shouldn't have been able to get the third out after getting the first 2 outs so quickly. Yeah. I think this one is on the players playing poorly, specifically the bullpen, not on the manager. The manager, I think managers get too much blame and too much credit most of the time in Major League Baseball. And for me, it's like Wrobleski comes in, gets the first out, and then 5 batters later, 5 runs are in. That's on the pitcher. That's not on the manager. I promise Dave Roberts didn't give him the give up 5 run sign. He brought in a guy who has been reliable for him this year, who has pitched in this exact role of piggybacking off Otani this year and has done well in that role. And then Wrobleski sucked tonight. That's not a criticism of Wrobleski the person. It's an analysis, a very basic analysis of the way he pitched tonight. He was very bad, and the Dodgers lost. I guess the good news is the Padres lost 2 again today. The Padres seem intent on being as bad as the Dodgers are. So the Dodgers lead over the Padres remains 2. Over at FanDuel, the odds for the Dodgers to win the division remain at -800, which is what they were yesterday when we talked over at FanGraphs based on simulations. The Dodgers' chance to win the division is at 90.3%, which is very close to where it was yesterday. It might have gone down a little bit. Their chance to clinch the bye is down to 0.6%. That's out the window. Not going to happen. They are still sitting at 100.0% chance to make the playoffs. They also have 13.8% chance to win the World Series, which is still by a tiny margin the highest of any team in baseball. None of that is based on this game. This game sucked. The bullpen sucked, and the offense again did a good job. Put up 6 runs off, scored 4 runs off a really good pitcher in Christopher Sanchez. Battled back in the 8th inning, put up, rallied to tie the game, and ultimately, it didn't work out because the bullpen couldn't get the job done, and that is unfortunately a pretty common theme that I guess is the next thing I'm going to jump into. This Dodgers bullpen is bad, and not because the talent isn't there, and it hasn't been bad all the time, but way too inconsistent. And there's all sorts of, you have the fact that Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates, the 2 big free agent signings, have both been bad this year. Tanner Scott didn't pitch in this game, was actually good his last 2 appearances. This game's not on Tanner Scott. Plenty of games this year have been on Tanner Scott. Kirby Yates was good at the beginning of the year, has had a couple decent performances recently, but definitely not any sort of the consistency, more bad than good, not what you're looking for in a high profile relief pitcher free agent signing. And then you have guys who, even like yesterday, we talked about, it was the 3 guys who going into the game, you'd probably say Vesia, Bonda, and Dreyer were 3 of the guys you trust the most in that bullpen. They're the ones who gave it up yesterday. Today, it's Wrobleski and Treinen, who are probably maybe the next 2 on that list. And they gave it up. It's not even the guys who people just bite their nails every time they come in, it's been the guys who have been reasonably decent this year. And Treinen, obviously, he had the huge high-profile blow up against the Orioles in the Yamamoto no-hitter game. That is, it's been a bad week and a half for Blake Treinen for sure. I don't know. I don't know if there's any hope for him. I wish I knew, because the fact is, for the Dodgers to have any success in October, and again, they are going to play in October. The question is how many games. It could be as few as 2. They're going to be playing in the wild card round. They'll probably have home field advantage for that. But, we've seen them lose short series to lesser teams way too often recently. In the last 6 years, I can think of 3 times they lost a short series to a lesser team. And it's, if they're going to have success in October, they're going to need their bullpen to pitch better. And that means, because, in a second, I'll talk about the trade deadline a little bit more, because I know that is a hot topic that a lot of people want to talk about. But the roster is what it is at this point. And you could maybe look at AAA. Somebody in our Discord tonight, which, by the way, if you want to join that, just go to patreon.com/realfrg. $5 a month gets you access to our Discord server. It's fun. Wasn't as much fun tonight, but still, we're talking Dodgers while we're watching Dodgers. But somebody in there was saying there must be somebody at AAA who they can call up. But it's like, Will Klein, I guess. His last 4 or 5 appearances have been good in Oklahoma City. He's got good stuff, but he's, command is not his strong suit, and command has been part of the issue. Bobby Miller had a stretch where he was a good reliever, and then he stopped being a good reliever. You have Andrew Heaney, who the Dodgers signed to a minor league contract, and he's been really good in his couple appearances with Oklahoma City. And looks like he's preparing in case there's a long relief role. I mean, it would be like the Justin Wrobleski role, a left-handed long reliever. And, Andrew Heaney's a possibility, but it's not like there's a ton of options in AAA. Maybe a guy here, a guy there. Obviously, Ben Kasparius will probably be back up at some point. But beyond that, it's just kind of, not a ton of guys banging on the door in AAA. And so we're looking at who's on the roster now. And the fact is, going in October, you need these guys to pitch better than they're currently pitching, because that's who you have. And Blake Treinen is a guy we saw last year. Blake Treinen was huge for the Dodgers in the postseason. And he could be again. The stuff isn't much different than it was last year. The command seems off, but he's also been hurt a lot of the year. And so, maybe, but it's like we're at the point in the season, 12 games left, something like that, where it's not super comfortable. Maybe 11 games left. Yeah, 11 games left, I think. It's not super comfortable to say, well, I hope he figures it out, because, he could, but he also could not. And, the starting pitching has been very, very good lately. But you need the bullpen to at least carry their weight. I think we can probably rule out the bullpen carrying the Dodgers to a World Series title like they did last year. But we need them to at least be serviceable so that the starters don't have to go 9 innings a game. It's not going to be somebody else in the Discord brought up the 1963 Dodgers, who I don't know if you guys are familiar with how that series went for the Dodgers. The Dodgers had 9 pitchers on their postseason roster, on their World Series roster that year, which is already 4 fewer than the Dodgers are going to have on their postseason rosters this year. 9 pitchers on the roster. Only 4 of them pitched in the World Series. Don Drysdale started 1 game, had 1 complete game. Sandy Koufax started 1 game, had 2 complete games. Johnny Padres started 1 game, went 8 1/3 innings. Ron Perinoski pitched 2/3 of an inning, was the only relief pitcher the Dodgers used in the 1963 World Series. That we're not going to have that kind of postseason for the Dodgers this year. The starting pitching has been good. I don't think we can count on them throwing complete games every time out, especially because unlike 1963, there's multiple rounds. That in 1963, the entire postseason was the World Series. Now, Dodgers are going to have to win 13 games to win the World Series. You're not going to get 13 complete games. You're not going to get one complete game. Dodgers are going to need the bullpen to pitch better. And so you look at guys like Blake Treinen, definitely going to need to step up. He has the stuff. It could happen. Tanner Scott is going to need to pitch better. That's why, when people are melting down about them putting Tanner Scott in a game, it's like, because if the Dodgers are going to succeed in October, they need Tanner Scott to figure it out and be good. And, maybe he has figured something out. He said he thought maybe he was tipping his pitches. And so maybe the last two appearances where he pitched well, maybe he wasn't tipping his pitches anymore. Because, and you remember what I've said in the past, if you are a regular listener, I've said Tanner Scott seems like he's had some bad luck this year because every bad pitch he's made has gotten hammered. And in the game on Saturday night, he actually made a bad pitch, threw a fastball right down the middle, and got a lazy fly out to center. And I said at our watch party there in Pico Rivera, I said, this could be a turning point, because to make a bad pitch and not have it go over the fence, that's how most bad pitches end up. Most bad pitches don't get hit for home runs. And seemed like Tanner Scott's all of them were this year. But the more I think about it, if he's tipping his pitches, that makes sense, because if a fastball's coming and then he throws it right down the middle, it's a lot easier to hit than if you have to protect against the slider and you get a fastball down the middle. You're still, maybe the timing's not going to be as good. So maybe Tanner Scott can be okay in the postseason. There's a lot of maybes. Edgardo Enriquez has shown promise. Justin Wrobleski has been really good at times this year. When the velocity is better, I expect he'll pitch better. All of that stuff is what we're dealing with, what the Dodgers have to hope for at this point, which is why they just got to keep rolling these relievers out and giving them a chance, because nobody's going to get better sitting in the bullpen. If you're going to get better, it's going to be pitching in games and figuring out how to get big league hitters out. And yeah, the bullpen's been bad. And maybe the bullpen could stay bad in October and the Dodgers could still win because the offense is playing better now. If the offense wakes completely up in October and the starting pitching is dominant, and because it's the postseason, they let them go 8 innings instead of 6 or 7, maybe. I don't want to bet on that. The Dodgers need their relief pitchers to pitch better. And so I guess that brings us to the last topic, which is, should the Dodgers have done more at the trade deadline? And before I jump into that, I want to get to a super chat that came in earlier from Francisco Diaz, $19.99 super chat. Thanks, Francisco. He says, this had a 2014-16 postseason games feel. Great 5 innings by our starter. Offense got an early lead, but just for the pen to blow it. Oh, and guess what? If the Dodgers, big if, make it out of the wild card round, they get Philly. Not good. The Phillies would be the Dodgers matchup in the division series if the Dodgers can get there. But also, like I mentioned last night, this is now 5 games with the Phillies. The Phillies have won 4 of them, and they've now scored a total of 4 runs more than the Dodgers in those 5 games. All the games have been tight. Even this one. This was the biggest blowout in the 5 games. The Phillies won by 3 runs, and it was tied in the 9th inning. Like the Dodgers, while the Phillies are a very good team, whoever the Dodgers play in the bullpen or in the postseason is going to be good. But this Phillies team is beatable if the Dodgers play better. And I know that's basic, and I don't mean it to sound like, oh, play gooder and then you win. But unfortunately, in a game like this, that's what it comes down to. If Justin Wrobleski makes 2 fewer terrible pitches, Dodgers win the game. If Blake Treinen makes 1 fewer terrible pitch, Dodgers have a chance at least. Maybe we're still playing in extra innings right now. The little things, and unfortunately, what we know is the little things sometimes go against you just as much. So anyway, I want to talk about the trade deadline, because that's been a big topic that I saw in the chat earlier. Somebody saying this is the problem with just trying to expecting to flip the switch in October. It doesn't work that way. Should have done more at the trade deadline, and we all wanted more more stuff at the trade deadline, specifically relief pitchers. I said at the time, the individual trades that the Dodgers made, I liked all of them at the trade deadline. There weren't any trades that I didn't like. I just didn't think there were as many as I wished there would be. And that is, it was specifically about the bullpen that I felt that way. I wanted more bullpen help. But the thing is, you look at the guys who did get traded, and it's like, well, yeah, I wanted Yohan Duran. I brought him up the first time Clint and I talked about trade deadline back in early July. I brought up Yohan Duran as a guy I wanted on the Dodgers. His stuff is great. We saw him blow a save last night. He's not infallible, but his stuff is great, and he does a really good job. But then we've seen other guys. Ryan Helsley has been terrible. Camilo Duvall has been bad. David Bednar has been bad. Like a lot of these relievers who did get traded at the trade deadline have been bad. And yeah, I absolutely would have wanted Yohan Duran. I don't know if the Dodgers had any talks about him or not. It's possible that what the Phillies wanted just didn't match up with what the Dodgers had available. But it's also possible that the Dodgers just decided it wasn't worth the high price to get him. I don't know which one it is. And I don't think anybody else in the fan community does either. And I think a lot of people talk like they do know. They just assume they know that the Dodgers could have got this guy and could have got that guy. Ultimately, yeah, it sucks that the one reliever they did get immediately got hurt and wasn't great before he got hurt. And so, I wish the Dodgers had added Yohan Duran at the trade deadline. I don't know what it would have taken. And I'm not saying I wish they had gotten him at any cost, but I wish they had gotten him, in a vacuum. Yeah, I would like this Dodgers bullpen more if Yohan Duran was in it. But the one I wanted was David Bednar. And David Bednar, last I looked, I haven't checked lately. I don't keep tabs on him much, but let's see. He is, since going to the Yankees, he's down to a 2.41 ERA, so he's gotten better. I know he was really bad when he first went over there, but looks like he has settled in. So maybe Bednar, who I wanted, would be an improvement for this Dodgers team. I'm just looking to see if, he's been solid after a really bumpy start with the Yankees. Would have been fine with that. Jason Diamond says Friedman likes to stockpile those prospects. And, I think there's some of that, but I really do think, and this is a good thing and a bad thing, that Andrew Friedman doesn't like to overpay for relief pitchers, especially at the trade deadline, which is when relief pitchers are the most expensive. And some of that probably comes from the fact that the last two times the Dodgers did overpay for relief pitchers or went out and, got high profile relief pitchers, the guys they gave up were Yordan Alvarez and O'Neal Cruz. And the guys they got didn't do a ton for them. I think Friedman, in Friedman's perfect world, and really, I know this to be true because he said it at either the Kirby Yates or Tanner Scott press conference. He said his goal was to not buy at the trade deadline. And specifically, he was talking about the bullpen. He was talking about relief pitchers. The reason they signed Tanner Scott and Kirby Yates was so they wouldn't have to trade for relievers at the trade deadline. And, I don't know. Again, since I don't know what trades were on the table, I don't know if there's a trade that I think Andrew Friedman should have made. I'd have to see what trades were possible. Like I said, I like the individual trades he did make at the trade deadline. I just wish there had been more. But yeah, Andrew Friedman doesn't like to overpay for relievers, and he's got a good track record. The Dodgers have been a very successful team, and some of that, so people call it prospect hugging, and I just don't think that's it. Andrew Friedman has shown a lot of willingness to trade prospects. He traded 5 or 6 guys for Manny Machado. He traded some really, one really good prospect in Willie Calhoun, plus a couple other prospects for Yu Darvish. He traded, traded Michael Busch and made a really good trade there. There's been Andrew Friedman is perfectly willing to trade prospects, but I do think he looks at who he has and tries to project their future, which is his job. And the fact is, one example I bring up sometimes is there was a guy on Twitter who used to yell at me angrily as if it was my fault, but that the Dodgers wouldn't trade Alex Verdugo for relief pitching. And I said I was on board with not trading Verdugo for relief pitching because I thought Verdugo was too good a prospect to trade for relievers. I said it this year after the Padres traded for Mason Miller. I said the Padres already had a great bullpen, and so adding a great reliever to their bullpen, it was a very marginal upgrade. And we've seen that. Mason Miller he's pitched well for the Padres. He hasn't impacted the pennant race at all, because a reliever can only impact it so much. And so going back to the Verdugo thing, I used to tell this guy, no, I don't want them to trade Alex Verdugo for a relief pitcher. I want them to get relief pitchers when they need relief pitchers, but you don't trade Alex Verdugo just because you have him and you don't need him. And who did the Dodgers end up trading Alex Verdugo for? Mookie Betts. I think we can all agree we would rather have Mookie Betts from, even if he retired after this year, from 2020 through 2025, Mookie Betts over whatever relief pitcher this dude wanted the Dodgers to trade for in 2018. I can't even think of a guy who would have been a good relief pitcher in 2018 because we've forgotten all of those guys. Dodgers ended up getting Mookie Betts. It's not prospect hugging, but it is, why would I trade this guy for this marginal commodity when I might need him to trade for this, great commodity? Zaire Hope may never play for the Dodgers. The Dodgers might trade him, but if they do trade him, it won't be for a relief pitcher. And that's why Andrew Friedman doesn't like to shop for relievers at the trade deadline, because you do end up doing things like giving up Leo DeVries for Mason Miller. Not knocking AJ Preller for making that trade, just saying that's the kind of trade you have to make to get an elite relief pitcher at the trade deadline. And it's, Leo DeVries is the number 3 prospect in baseball. And maybe the Padres end up very happy with that trade. There's also a decent chance they end up regretting it. And that's the thing, So I'm not saying Friedman is right or wrong for his approach to the trade deadline, but, like I said, I wish he had gotten 1 or 2 good relievers on top of the trades they did make. But ultimately, the talent the Dodgers have in the bullpen right now should be better than the performance they're getting. And that's what it boils down to for me. And the Dodgers kind of bet on Blake Treinen pitching better and Tanner Scott pitching better. And, maybe Kirby, I don't know if they're betting on anything with Kirby Yates, but, there's a lot of potential with a lot of these guys. And it's entirely possible, I wouldn't say likely, but I think it's entirely possible that this Dodgers bullpen does live up a little bit better to its talent level in October, and it ends up not being a huge liability. That's what I'm hoping for, because there's been times this year when it hasn't been a huge liability. But there's been way too many times, including tonight, when it was a huge liability. And that's the thing, that they need to be better. I just saw Ray Soto says Josue de Paula will marinate in the minors. Andrew Friedman would rather sign a free agent. If the Dodgers sign a free agent outfielder that's keeping Josue de Paula out of a job, de Paula will not sit in the minors. He will be one of those guys the Dodgers trade for somebody better than a relief pitcher. If he's not going to play, Josue de Paula is a great prospect. Zaire Hope is a great prospect. Even the guy they got for Destin May, Tibbs, is turning into a pretty good prospect, outfield prospect. Dodgers have outfield prospects. There may not be room for all of them. They may go out and go after Kyle Tucker this offseason, whatever. But if that's the case, de Paula won't just sit in the minors. De Paula will have a lot of trade value if the Dodgers decide that he's not going to play in the big leagues for them. Michael Carrillo says maybe Mark Pryor is the problem. No reason to think that. I don't know. I think pitching coaches are right up there with managers and get too much blame and too much credit. And I could be wrong about that. And I actually mean that. Most people, when they say I could be wrong, they don't actually mean that. I actually mean that. One of my main beliefs in life is that there's very few things I'm super confident that I'm sure correct about. But, Mark Pryor, it's hard for me to see how Mark Pryor would have caused Justin Wrobleski to throw 93 miles an hour today and throw pitches right down the middle. Like it doesn't feel like a pitching coach thing to me. It feels like whatever reason, maybe just an off day. Pitchers sometimes just have an off day. Sometimes, it could be indicative of something else. I don't know. But they've had, Pryor's had a lot of success with other pitchers. And again, probably got too much credit for those ones. Probably gets too much blame for these ones. I don't know what the answer is. Dodger Suck is here in the chat because despite his name, he, like me, spends a lot of time thinking about the Dodgers. So good for him. Glad he's here. Joe Mama says, you are wrong, Jeff, and you're not confident at all. I don't think that's my actual mama because I'm in her basement right now. But anyway, this game, it sucked. Like, this is a game the Dodgers should have won because we should be talking about Shohei Ohtani throwing 5 no-hit innings or 6 no-hit innings or whatever. We should be talking about Ohtani hitting his 50th home run. Shohei Ohtani has played 2 seasons with the Dodgers and has the 2 highest single-season home run totals in Dodgers franchise history, 130 years long. Manuel is here. That's awesome because Manuel, who in the YouTube comments when he criticized me the other day and I replied, he dropped down to no hard feelings. I didn't mean any offense. And now he's here in the chat talking about how I'm too monotonous and I'm just a puppet for Dave Roberts. So Manuel, when called out, sometimes backs off his opinions. So we'll see if that happens this time or if he's just going to sit there and whine about me some more. Who knows? The only reason I replied is because I also saw or heard after the fact the episode that I did from my car on my way to California last week. Manuel and somebody else in the chat were talking about how I get angry when people talk about me sometimes. And so I just want to give Manuel what he's looking for here. Not angry. I haven't been mad since, I haven't been mad about baseball in a long time. Been sad a few times. Haven't been mad, I don't think, since Jonathan Broxton gave up the home run to Matt Stairs. Haven't been mad about something important since 8th grade. So yeah, I don't really get mad. But I do think that, I appreciate people who continue to watch me day after day to whine about me, because your numbers count too. And, Louis Toledo says the Padres bullpen on the Dodgers team would be 100 wins. Yeah. 100 wins already, right now at this point in the season and maybe more. This Dodgers bullpen, and maybe that kind of underscores my point that, there's all different ways to win the games. And your goal is to just not have any one part be so bad that it's actively costing you games. And that's the Dodgers bullpen lately. And so because of that, Shohei Ohtani is an afterthought in this game, despite being elite on the mound and at the plate today. It's games like this is like, I just want to appreciate Shohei Ohtani for being the most unique, special baseball player we've ever seen in our lives. And instead, we had to talk about Justin Wrobleski and Blake Treinen and Dave Roberts and the bullpen and blah, 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 blah. Freddie says, Blake Snell is really going to have to throw a no-hitter tomorrow, huh? Yeah. And keep the pitch count down so that, the bullpen doesn't need to come in. For all of the gripes, I'm in favor of trying to keep this starting pitching staff healthy. And part of the reason is because the bullpen is bad. And so we need the starting pitching in October to be able to go 7 or 8 innings in a game so that we don't have to have the bullpen pitch as often. But yeah, this should have been a Shohei Ohtani episode celebrating Shohei Ohtani. Instead, it's another bullpen blew a game episode. And that sucks. But, here we are. Just looking at the chat. Interesting. Joe Mama says, first he prefaces it, says, honestly, this is my honest opinion. He thinks the Dodgers are playing possum. And yeah, I wish I agreed with that. I wish I thought there was any possibility that that was the case, that the Dodgers, oh yeah, we're just going to get other people's confidence level up. I just don't think that happens. But you know what? The offense has looked better recently. So that's good. They pounded the Giants 2 all-star starters over the weekend. And then they did put up runs against the Phillies, 2 very good starters the last 2 days. Have another good starter coming up tomorrow. There's things to like. And that's the most frustrating part, is that if the bullpen was pitching better, we would be talking about those good things, instead of this. And that, yesterday it was Bonda and Vesia and Dreyer. And today it's Wrobleski and Treinen, probably the Dodgers' 5 best relievers. And that's who has sucked the last 2 days. The Phillies are a very good team. Maybe it's just that the Phillies are a very good team. It's maybe not a coincidence that 4 of those 5 guys are left-handed. I don't know, but ultimately the bullpen needs to step up, because the offense is starting to do its part. The starting pitching is definitely doing its part. And so, Dodgers play again tomorrow. Roberto Hernandez says, I'm mad. And then life continues tomorrow. Yep. The Dodgers will play again tomorrow. We'll have another day tomorrow. We'll have another episode tomorrow. Maybe we'll get to talk about a win this time. Maybe we'll get to talk about the bullpen doing its job. Maybe we'll talk about a Blake Snell no-hitter. Whatever it is, we'll be here to talk about, because that's what we do here at All Dodgers. And I think that's about it for me for today. I appreciate all of you being here. I appreciate even those of you who were rude to me and made me cry. I don't care. If there's one thing I am, I said I'm not confident in a lot of my opinions, or not confident that I'm right. I'm pretty comfortable in my own skin. And so I am pretty good with people criticizing me. I will clap back at you, because I'm also pretty confident in that I'm funnier than you. And so if you say something rude, I'll probably say something rude back, and mine will be funnier. And that's okay. But I appreciate most of you who aren't a-holes and just come to talk Dodgers, even on a day like today when it's not fun. It's a bummer of a game, but it's still fun talking Dodgers together, because we love our Dodgers. I'll remind you, I don't love the Dodgers because they win. I want them to win because I love them. There's a difference, and it's an important difference to me. Baseball is the most unimportant thing in my life. But there's a lot of important things in life too that are much more important to me than baseball. But when it comes to unimportant things, give me baseball and the Dodgers. I am a diehard, but diehard meaning in the context of unimportant things. I'm sure some of you agree with that, some of you don't, and that's okay, because that's part of being a fan. We can all agree and disagree on whatever we want. But thank you all for being here in the chat. Thanks to our mods for keeping track of the chat. Looked like maybe they had to do a little bit of work tonight for the mods. So I appreciate you guys. Thanks to the Bleav Network. Thanks to FanDuel for being our sponsor. Be sure to go to patreon.com/realfrg. $5 a month, you can get access to our Discord server. All of that. Thanks to all of you. And with that, I will say bye.